Yes, folks, we're back once again right here, Valley Views on KROJ 101.5 FM here in the San Fernando Valley. Broadcasting live right here from the studios at Pueblo y Salud in the city of San Fernando. Really fortunate to be here and being able to spend some time right here with our guests that are already here. And not only that, they're here to talk about some really important things happening through their organization, which is Initiate Justice Action. And we'll get a chance to really dive deep here. But we have Taina Vargas right here in the house and also Shervin Aazami right here. First of all, good morning. How y'all doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having us.
Good morning.
Yes. It's great to have you guys here in the studio. One of the things we like to do at the beginning of our segment here with our featured guests is first just tell us, how is your mind, body, and spirit right here, right now? Taina, we'll start with you.
All right. Well, first of all, thanks so much for having us here. I'm feeling great. I know we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the upcoming election, but I think that's where my mind is right now.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit tired, getting ready for things, but excited. I think there's going to be some cool things on the ballot, and I'm excited to be in community.
Yes, absolutely. What about yourself? And before you answer that question, though, Shervin, it is your birthday today. So happy birthday, first of all, on behalf of our crew here, of course, Valley Views KROJ. Happy birthday.
Thank you so much. Thank you, KROJ. Glad to be here on my birthday.
Yes, and how is your mind, body, and spirit right here on your birthday as well?
Feeling good, feeling excited, feeling a little tired, feeling a little nervous, but, just another day, feeling like we're going to hit it strong.
Yeah, absolutely. It's thank you so much for coming out here today and really to get our listening audience to really get to know y'all and the work that you guys do through Initiate Justice Action. Taina, maybe we'll start with you as far as tell us a little bit more about just this organization that you are the founder of and executive director.
Absolutely. So I started Initiate Justice back in 2016. At the time, I had a loved one who was incarcerated, and I was also working for a nonprofit organization where I was working on, criminal justice reform policy. But my experience was, going to visit the prison every weekend, that the people who were inside and the other people who were visiting like me didn't really have the connection to how to change statewide policy. So I created Initiate Justice to build that bridge to connect people who are directly impacted by incarceration, meaning folks who are currently formerly incarcerated, or people like me who had loved ones inside, to learn how they can actually draft bills and change laws that can impact their lives. So started Initiate Justice in 2016. We started training folks who are inside and outside. We've introduced several pieces of legislation that have passed and made an impact, including Prop 17, which restored voting rights to people on parole in 2020. So now everybody on parole in California can vote.
All right, first of all, can we just pause for a second there, because that's pretty big.
Yeah.
Take a breath, please.
Right.
I'm trying to catch up. My mind's racing. Couple things there. Prop 17. Talk a little bit about that, actually, just as far as it's even just to get it on the ballot, right? Because you gotta hit that mark as far as signatures across the state, right? And then to get it passed. This is no small victory.
It was not small. It was a heavy lift. But first, I want to shout out our board member, Rasan Thomas, who was incarcerated at San Quentin at the time. And Prop 17 was his idea. He said, if you want to be activating our political power, first we need to be able to have our right to vote. So we started the campaign back in 2017. And it ended up being a legislative referral, actually. So we didn't have to go the route of collecting signatures.
Oh, got it.
We had to introduce a constitutional amendment in the legislature, but we needed 2/3 of the legislators to approve it. So that was a very heavy lift. And then we needed...
And was that on both sides of the House there, as far as the Senate and the Assembly?
Yep. We needed 27 votes in the Senate and 54 in the Assembly, and we made it. We got bipartisan support in both houses. And then when it came for the election in November 2020, we passed by the highest margin of all state ballot measures that year.
Wow.
Second highest number of yes votes in the California state history, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a heavy lift that was accomplished, right? And really through grassroots
also,
struggles.
it just goes to show, how impacted community was.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
the outcome.
Right.
So it was something that was very needed and very like wanted.
Exactly.
Well. Yeah.
No, from beginning to end, from drafting the legislation to getting it through the legislature to activating voters come election time, like this effort was completely led by people who are directly impacted by incarceration.
You know, there's always people who have these like huge ideas and they think I'm just one person. Like, how am I going to do all of this? And I just want to say, like, you're that perfect example of like an individual who was just going through some hardship, and you like came out of that hardship with not only resource for yourself but resources for others. And not, I mean, like the outcome of what you've done is you know, like I don't even have words. Incredible. Yeah. So that's amazing, and I just want to give you kudos for that.
No, thank you. And that's why we took it to the next level. After we passed Prop 17, we started Initiate Justice Action, which is a 501c4 organization.
And can you talk about that difference, right? Because a lot of folks do know the structure of, like, for example, of a 501c3, but not the C4, you know, and there is some very, you know, distinct differences there.
Yeah, so a couple of distinctions. One, for a 501c4, we have we can do unlimited lobbying, so we can contact our legislators as much as we want. You have limits under a 501c3, like you can do some, but you know, it can only be a small percentage of what you do. We can also endorse candidates, which is something that we do in our voter guides, which we'll talk a little bit more about. We can, you know, raise money for political purposes. So, you know, that's the reason that we wanted to start a 501c4 that is led by and for people impacted by incarceration, that's putting forward like real, like radical, progressive reform ideas. Because I think a lot of times when we think about these political processes, we're like, oh, it's only for, you know, these super PACs or these people who have millions of dollars, you know. But really, we have the power of the people. We just have to be strategic in how we utilize that power. And that's what we do at IJ Action.
That's kind of a trippy kind of like myth, right? It's like I'm just like blown away by that, because it's like it's the grassroots usually that's even more impactful in that sense, you know. And what about so through all this work, how did y'all with Shervin here also cross paths, you know? That it already sounds like it's going to be an interesting story here, you know. But like how did that come about?
It's a great story. Do you want to tell it, Shervin, or should I?
I'll let you start.
Okay, I'll start. So something that I like to do, you know, before every election is have a ballot party. So sometimes I have them at my house and just bring like community together to come and like fill out your ballots together. IJ Action's actually going to be having a ballot party in LA on February 17th, which I can talk about later.
Yes.
But I had one at my house 2 years ago, and a friend of mine was like, hey, I know a candidate who's running for Congress in your area. You know, I think it'd be great if he came to your party. And I was like, cool, invite him over. And that's how I met Shervin Aazami, who was running for Congress in 2022.
Right. That's right. That's the time I met him, because I interviewed him when he was running for Congress.
And, you know, and then the election didn't turn out the way that we hoped. Right. So I reached out to Taina, like, yo, I need a job. Can I come organize with y'all?
And I was like, absolutely. As sad as I am that he's not my Congress member, I'm glad I get to work with him.
Hey, now he's on your team, right? And that's a plus and a bonus there. Yeah. And, you know, like, your organization is, again, like, you know, looking at it through this lens of folks that you said either been incarcerated, you know, formerly incarcerated, or have, you know, their family incarcerated. How was that? Like, just, you know, for you, right, being impacted by such?
I mean, I think that what I learned in my experience and having a loved one in prison, and it didn't just start with, it was my ex-husband who was incarcerated. It didn't just start there. Like, both of my parents had been incarcerated. My brother and sister have been incarcerated at a certain point. So it was something that I realized that really, the only time our community got access to resources was when they had contact with the police. So I really just wanted to do something to, like, help our folks see that we can actually be the authors of legislation to change our conditions, that our voices needed to be heard by elected officials at the city, county, state, and federal levels, because they're, you know, hearing from people who are not impacted by incarceration when it comes to developing policy, right? When we think about public safety, people will say, oh, well, that means the police, or that means the district attorneys, or, you know, we're only safe with prisons and jails. So for me, it's just been like a real blessing to have the opportunity to work with folks who are impacted like me, because we do have the solutions.
Yeah.
We know better than anybody, like, what keeps our community safe, because we see exactly, like, how we've been failed by the system. Mm-hmm. So it's been incredibly rewarding to have this opportunity, to kind of just, like, get the fire started, but really, like, people take the fire and run with it on their own. Like, people who have had similar experiences to me, like, know exactly what to do. They just need somebody to help guide them in the right direction.
Yeah, a part of it is like you said, that guidance and the resources, and even being able to navigate those resources, because it could be a labyrinth, like dealing with any big institution, and especially the prison industrial complex,
exactly.
which we could talk about if you like, but because of its impact, and who it impacts disproportionately as well, so tell us a little bit about, like, through some of your work here too, like, because it sounds like y'all obviously are doing work like statewide.
Right.
Do you guys focus on campaigns and actions that are also more locally based,
Yeah, so we do prioritize state, because specifically, like, us working on prison reform, most people incarcerated are locked up in the state prison system. So we focus on state leaders, which include, like, governor and other state administrative offices, like attorney general, secretary of state, things like that. And then the state legislature, which is the two houses, as we mentioned earlier, the state senate, state assembly. But we do make exceptions to include local races in our voter guides sometimes, specifically being here in LA. About a third of all incarcerated people come from LA County, so it has a really big impact. Folks might already know LA County Jail is the biggest mental health service provider in the world, and it's really shameful.
Wow,
Yeah.
I mean, in the world.
In the world, we have services the most people struggling with mental health issues.
And it's going through the prison system, though, right? Yeah. And I think that's where there's been a lot of, like, disconnect. I know folks on the people's budget, right? Of course, there's a lot of calls, right, for, like, how we actually spend city and county funds, and it's just incredible because that also means the amount of resources that come from our taxpayer dollars.
And we're in a budget deficit this year because of a contract signed with LAPD. We have underfunding for housing and homelessness, underfunding for child care, child services, and all of our budget keeps going towards systems of harm, systems of pain for our communities, and that's what needs to change. Yeah,
and that's kind of like, when I think about y'all initiate justice action, I really think about disruptors, visionaries, because y'all are trying to really reform, and through your experiences, and not just inside the actual system, but also, like, from the outside. And it's so important to, like, get the folks that are actually the most impacted by this to also be leading the charge, because who better, right, to, like, actually speak for someone if it's like your struggle, than
not only that, but I feel like when you're going through something so hard, like, navigating the jail systems here, I think that if you're going through it alone, it's very overwhelming. But to have, an organization that is going to help and walk you through and even go beyond that, and provide more resource, I think that it's just something that community really, really needs. And
big time.
It's sorry guys, I have these moments where I just pause because I'm trying to collect my thoughts, but it's really, for me, I think about putting myself in that situation, and that's exactly what I would look towards, is like building community within.
Right.
And so that's what I'm seeing here, is that that's what you guys have done.
And these are all policy choices, right? Like our lawmakers are so disconnected from the communities that they're supposed to be serving.
Right.
I think it was last night we were at an event that Taina hosted for a slate of candidates running for Superior Court judge here in LA. Folks who are reform-minded, focused on ending mass incarceration, and I believe one of them, Greg Wiley, shared the story about how over the past 40 years. Our state has opened 23 prisons and only 3 colleges. So what a great representation of how the system fails the communities every single day by not investing in actual systems of care.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, that disconnect, right, between those that are really needing these services and not being able to actually access them, the list goes on and on. Even if we could, talk about like our unhoused neighbors,
Right.
I mean, the homelessness count just happened, right? I believe it was like last week or 2 weeks ago. And but yet we're still kind of, the challenges are still there, and it's again going back to like which voices are being heard or not heard, but let's take a quick short musical break, y'all, and then when we come back, I want to hear a little bit more too about the IJ's Action Community Impact Awards that y'all just had not too long ago. Any other policy work that y'all are working on or coming up, things that you guys are working towards, and then also, of course, the IJ Action Voter Guide. We'll get a little sneak peek. It's dropping February 5th. But we're going to go ahead and take a quick musical break. Again, we just want to also thank our sponsors of today's show, and that is the good old folks over at Superior Car Company, your cargo van and truck warehouse in North Hollywood. We'll be right back here, Valley Views, KROJ. Yes. We're back right here. And we been on this journey today, this morning, really talking about IJ Action, Initiate Justice Action here. And not only that, really talking about the impacts of just what happens when you have loved ones incarcerated and what that looks like. And not only that, but the advocacy that's going behind that statewide here in the state of California. And also, I want to really start talking about a couple things here, a couple more things related to the IJ voter guide in just a bit as well, but more back to some of the also policy work that y'all are working on, and then we'll get into the ballot parties once we start talking about elections as well. But just tell us a little bit more about there's a concept of abolitionist policy, but I want to really start with that first, and that is just how do you define an abolitionist?
I love to define that term through going through a thought experiment. So I want folks to think about, what do the safest communities look like? Do they look like communities that have the most cops and the most prisons? Or are they the communities with the most plentiful, good-paying jobs? Communities with clean air, clean water, communities that have affordable housing, communities that have access to green space, that have public transit, that have healthcare. Those are the safest communities. When we invest in those basic needs and services, we create healthy people, we create vibrant people, we create spaces where people feel connected. And what we've seen over the past 40, 50 years, because, let's just call it what it is, we live in a racist, classist society, we've seen divestment from those resources in communities of color, and instead replacing that with more cops in prisons. And we wonder why we have a school to prison pipeline, we have a foster care to prison pipeline. It's because we've seen divestment from the actual systems that keep people safe. And so being an abolitionist means, look, we live in the wealthiest country in the history of the world.
Yeah.
We can create systems where everyone's taken care of, everyone has those basic needs met, so that we all can thrive, we all can build together towards a thriving, amazing society. And so, again, these all boil down to policy choices. We live here in a state where we've got $14.5 billion going towards the prison system, and only a fraction of that going towards reentry rehabilitation, only a fraction of that going towards housing. We don't have universal child care in our state. We don't have universal single-payer health care in our state, but we continue to see the prison, and even more showing how this works, the prison population has gone down 25% over the past decade, but its budget keeps creeping up every single year.
Isn't that?
I mean,
what's going on with
the
that,
definition
right?
of illogical there,
Yeah.
right? So again, that's what abolition means, is investing in the real things that keep us safe.
Yeah.
Education, healthcare, housing, clean air and water, things like that.
Yeah, and just to add to that too, Shervin, is like here in just the state of California, depending on the year, but we rank usually between 5th through 7th world largest economy in the world.
That's right.
So and
That's
this
right.
is right here in California too, right? So I mean, just think about that, and then again, where our resources go,
Right.
and so it's the inequities, right? That happen
Right.
because of
Big
that,
time.
and abolitionists are really trying to.
Reframe the conversation.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and in a way disrupt that too,
That's
because again, like we talked about this, some of these things are by design,
Right.
some
Right.
would say, and so therefore, what has been on your side then, being those change makers, those disruptors, that experience, right, through the policy work?
You know, when we really kind of break it down in terms of like how we keep increasing investments in the prison and police system, but we're not seeing, you know, reductions in crime, we're not seeing reductions in recidivism, it's because it's not working. Those systems do not actually take care of people. And so when you couch it in terms of like, look, when we invest in systems of care, we see benefits across the spectrum. That's how we can fight for things like affordable housing, fight for things like healthcare programs. And so when you reframe the conversation, that's how we see the system start to change. Yeah. And that's why we took a lot of time in kind of putting forth a comprehensive abolitionist policy platform to give a real roadmap, like in terms of the environmental space, in the healthcare space, you know, in the education space, wherever it is, what does abolition look like? It means getting cops out of our schools and putting that money into more counselors and after-school programs. It means creating green spaces and places where people have clean air and water. It means investing more in affordable housing and not having folks being forced into homelessness because they can't afford rent because they're not making enough money because we have stagnant wages. So again, reframing that conversation and really talking about what are the root causes of crime and how do we actually invest in prevention.
Absolutely.
Yes, and it's that it's that prevention that's so key too, right? But again, it's like you said, that reframing, that it's like this mindset shift, but really it's like trying to break down like racist structures and systems, right? To actually be able to like make sure that the you know, system works for all, you know. And but you know, through those policies, and you guys have also the awards that you guys also give out, but it's also not just awards to give out awards, but really is to look at, you know, folks that are actually you know, helping to advance, right? Part of your mission. So tell us a little bit about that, the Community Impact Awards.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So we just had our Community Impact Awards ceremony on December 16th of last year, where it was our first one, but we are going to make it an annual thing. So, you know, save the date for December of 2024. But yeah, our Community Impact Awards, we gave out 4 awards, and we highlighted 2 members of our community. So a power builder of the year who was responsible for helping us like reach out to community and deepen our impact, an advocate of the year who was responsible for, you know, helping us like push policy forward last year, and then a community partner of the year. And actually the awardee was here in the San Fernando Valley. Her name is Gabrielle Melville, who runs a house in Reseda Ranch called Clear Skies Ranch, and you know, she let us like host some events there and does a lot of really great work for people who are coming home from prison. And I should have mentioned the names of our Power Builder of the Year was Vanessa Rojas, and our Advocate of the Year was Andy Lopez, both of whom were based down in San Diego. And then we also gave out a Legislator of the Year award. So we highlighted Assemblymember Isaac Bryan, who is the author of some of our voting rights legislation last year. He comes from a background of community organizing and has stayed like really true to the mission, even though he's in Sacramento now. But it's an opportunity to like not only like uplift folks who are doing amazing work, but to bring community together and to celebrate our wins, right? Because a lot of times things just feel like so dark and so depressing, you know, but it's really good to like take some time and be like, hey, we made a lot of progress this year. We have people in our community who are doing an amazing job. We have amazing allies in Sacramento like advocating for us. So it's just a moment for that. So hope to see folks there at our next one in December.
Awesome. No, and you know, you bring up a good point there too, Taina, about, you know, even in the struggle, we have to have joy. You know, because that is part of the struggle too. You know, I mean, there's going to be the pain, anguish, and, you know, so much like challenges and hurdles that we, you know, have to overcome. But yet, you know, you have to have joy. And so I'm glad y'all doing that too, giving yourselves flowers and giving others that are working with you guys and collaborating, partnering with you to also give their flowers, you know, because hopefully more folks, right, will be like, hey, where's my award? I guess I got to do some work. All right. So, no, that's beautiful. That's lovely. And then, you know, let's get into it then a little bit related to, let's just talk about first, you know, some general information about the primaries, you know, and, you know, that's right around the corner, March 5th, of course. You know, it's you know, our voting, you know, and happening all over the state, of course, but more importantly here, right, in the San Fernando Valley and in our state. But tell us a little bit about just the general election for folks that, you know, are wondering, like, so do I get a ballot? Where do I go vote? You know, stuff like that, you know?
Oh, sure. So, yeah, as you mentioned, we have a primary election. Election day is Tuesday, March 5th. I feel like we just, are still recovering from the 2022 elections.
Seriously.
Tell me about it.
2020.
Yeah, right. Seriously.
But 2024 is here. It's a presidential race, so more people will probably be paying attention to this one, but less people pay attention to the primaries. It's very, very important.
Yeah.
So for folks who don't know, like the main distinction between a primary and a general election is the primary in a lot of cases will determine which candidates will be on the ballot for the general election in November. So for the president, it'll help us determine who the nominee is for the presidential race in November. And,
Yeah.
similarly for our local races, it's the same thing too. So for, Senate and Assembly, we have a top two system. So the top two candidates who get the most amount of votes will appear on the ballot in November.
And that's regardless of party.
Regardless of party.
Could be two Democrats, two Republicans.
Exactly.
Yeah, at the state level, it's regardless of party. And then at the local level, some races are, they don't have to go to the general election. So some local races will actually be determined in the primary election.
You get that 50 plus 1.
Exactly.
That's right.
You're in.
Yeah.
or I guess majority in that sense, though, actually, too, right?
Yeah. But I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
That's one majority, same thing. So, showing up to the primaries are really, really important. Statistically speaking, the people who are less likely to show up in a primary election are young voters, are voters of color, are voters who are more low income. So it's really important that we are making our voices heard because, the politicians are going to pander to who they think is going to show up.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that they know that we're going to show up. So if you're not registered to vote, you can register before February 20th. That's the deadline. However,
around the corner.
Right around the corner. However, in California, we also have conditional voting where you can vote the day of the election.
That's right.
So you can show up, at your polling place the day of the election or even a few days before the election because we have a lot of flexibility here. You can actually vote early here.
We have voting centers now.
Yes, we do.
We have voting
voting
centers.
Yep,
where you can vote early and you can register. So if you miss that February 20th deadline, it's okay. You can vote provisionally, which means that you can cast your ballot and they have to confirm your information before they count it.
Yep.
So definitely encourage people to register before the deadline. Side note about that, if you've changed any of your information between the last time you registered to vote and now, so if you've moved or changed your name or anything like that, you got to re-register to vote. So you can visit the Secretary of State's website to check your status, which is registertovote.ca.gov. You can check your status there. You can register there. Another thing we have in California is you can actually pre-register to vote. So if you're 16 or 17 years old, you can pre-register and on your 18th birthday, you'll automatically be registered to vote.
Wow.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I remember when Alex Padilla, who's now, the senator, at the time he was the Secretary of State.
Right.
And, that work got pushed during that time. So, which is, just great to see, again, youth, right?
Yeah.
Pre-registering.
And I think for impacted folks, there was a lot of confusion about who's eligible to vote.
Right.
And so kind of to break that down, like Taina mentioned, Prop 17 that passed in 2020, that restored voting rights for folks on parole. So anyone in California who's on parole is eligible to vote. Anyone who's formerly incarcerated and off parole is eligible to vote. Anyone on probation can vote. Anyone who's incarcerated in county jails can vote unless they're awaiting a transfer to state prison. Those are the only folks. And folks who are in state prison or in federal prison cannot vote. But that's really the only population of impacted folks who cannot vote in the state of California. But if you're on parole, if you're formerly incarcerated and off parole, if you're on probation, or if you're in county jails, you are eligible to vote. So that's an important thing. And one thing that we're trying to work on is expand access to voting within our county jail system as well.
From your point of view and perspective from all the work y'all done, have you seen a little bit of that shift now since Prop 17 when it comes to registering folks to vote that again that fall under those categories that you just mentioned?
Yeah, so a big part of our work is we actually do active civic engagement with people who are formerly incarcerated. So we visit various reentry homes. So we'll straight up come to somebody's house where people who are formerly incarcerated are living, or we'll go to other organizations that provide services for people who are formerly incarcerated on parole and let them know hey, your voting rights have been restored. As soon as you got out, you were eligible to vote. We help people register to vote if they're not already registered. And then we also walk through the ballot with them, because it's one thing to know that you have your voting rights and register. But then after that, it's okay, I heard you mention earlier the ballots are dropping. I got my ballot already.
Me too.
Yeah. So, you might open that thing up and be like,
Yeah.
oh my God, there's like 100 people in here.
Exactly.
Like, I don't know any of these people. I don't even know what these offices do. So in our civic engagement workshops, we break down what each office does, specifically how each office can impact people who are impacted by incarceration. And then we do a little bit of, guidance on like how to research candidates. And that's why we also do our voter guide. And our voter guide, even though it is pretty comprehensive, we cover everybody running for state office. There's still the federal offices, the local offices. There's so much more to research. So we also try and help like point people in the direction of like other progressive voter guides who might provide information that we don't provide.
Yeah, and I want to get into that. I remember last year when I saw y'all at I think it was Lake Balboa actually, and y'all gave me last year's voter guide.
Yeah.
And I was really impressed. I actually still have it at my house, and I think I was showing it to you just the last time y'all were over at the house. But it's it's very comprehensive. Y'all gave me the physical copy right there. I was like, whoa, this is a lot right here.
It's like a phone book.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And after the elections were over, though, I was like, I don't feel like I want to throw this away or recycle it, But yeah, tell us. So the voter guide that you guys are releasing comes out tomorrow, February 5th. Tell us a little bit about this round of voter guide.
Yeah, I'll give an overview, and Shervin, if I'm missing anything, let me know. Shervin led a lot of the research this time around, so shout out to Shervin.
Woo, birthday boy.
But essentially, we break down every single candidate who is running for state senate and state assembly. So this time around for the primary, there were 80 candidates running for state senate, and 247 running for assembly. So total, we researched 327 candidates.
That's impressive.
Yep. So what we looked at is, just their basic background information. So like, what they do professionally, if they were elected to something else before, if they were, for example, like on city council before, what was their voting record like when they were on city council? So we dug up the dirt. We're spilling the tea. We also look at their platform on public safety. So anything that they're saying about public safety, like if they're saying, oh, I think we need more cops, or if I think we need justice reform and more investment in community, any statements that they have made publicly, we just like put that in the voter guide so that you can see what they're saying for yourself. And if they're in office already, then we put a little bit of information about their voting record in there. So something we actually didn't talk about is IJ Action also puts out a legislative scorecard at the end of every year. So we gave every current state legislator a grade. We looked at 6 bills that they had the opportunity to vote on, looked at how many of them they voted to support, and then gave them a grade. So their legislative scorecard grade is in there as well. So you can see, how they've been doing in the legislature if they're an incumbent. And then probably my favorite part is we look at their campaign contributions and indicate if they take money from law enforcement.
Where's that money coming from?
Who's taking money from the cops?
I actually
and then we
like
list
looking
the
at those.
agencies. Yeah.
Like I'm a geek when it comes to that, but I actually like to go on the the state websites too, and the city of LA does it too, and I guess everybody does it, right? But you could go and check everyone's campaign contributions.
Yeah, it's public information.
Public info. Yep. I like checking that, and then like looking at the names,
Yeah.
And there are some folks out there who love that cop money. Who really, really love that cop money.
Yeah, and it's kind of disappointing because there's some people who like really are like an advocate and they're like voting really well on our issues. When you look and you see that they're still taking money from law enforcement, so the voter guide is also an opportunity to like hold candidates accountable and be like, hey, why are you taking money from probation? Why are you taking money from the California Correctional Peace Officers Union? But that's actually a really interesting topic. Shervin was talking earlier about how even though the prison population's going down, the budget's going up. Yeah. One of those reasons might be a CCPOA contract that was passed last year.
Right.
So, they're able to maintain their jobs. They're able to get huge raises and huge bonuses, even though there's less people who are incarcerated, and they're giving millions of dollars away to people who are running for office every year.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
While we're all hurting and
right?
paying our last dollar, just to get by, and it's
the exact same problem we have here in LA, where we have a deficit because of the LAPD contract. It's happening up in Sacramento as well.
Everywhere, yeah.
And again, comes at the expense, right, of like mental health services
Yeah.
and social services,
social
housing.
services,
All the
Yep.
stuff that would actually help the community and the people
Exactly.
paying for
Right.
it. Yeah.
But we have the opportunity to, hold those legislators accountable and those
Yeah.
candidates who are taking the money. So that's one of the
awesome.
reasons we have this guide, so folks can look and say, hey, why are you taking CCPOA money? Why are you taking money
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
Highway Patrol or Peace Officers Research Association? What even is that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Well, some say it's a union, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the. So since we're talking about elections, and that was a lot of information there. Thank you for sharing that too. Let's also talk about the ballot parties a little bit more. You already mentioned some of those, but and the importance, right, of also having those. I mean, think about it. That's where y'all met, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But so tell us a little bit more about those ballot parties.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that can be our selling point, Shervin. Be like, hey, Shervin came to IJ Action from a ballot party, so everybody should come.
If you want to meet Shervin,
Right.
go to a ballot party.
I mean, and Shervin mentioned last night we were at an event for some progressive candidates running for LA Superior Court Judge. I invited them all to our ballot parties too, so it's a good opportunity to have candidates there as well. But as I mentioned, IJ Action, we're a statewide organization, so we're going to be having ballot parties in 6 different regions across the state over the month of February. So we'll have 2 in San Diego, 1 here in LA, 1 in the Inland Empire, 1 in the Central Valley, and 1 in the Bay Area. So we try to cover as much ground as possible. And shout out to our amazing members who are actually leading the ballot parties in the various areas. But the one in LA is going to be at our office in downtown LA on Saturday, February 17th from 4 to 6 p.m. The information's on our Instagram page. So if you don't already follow us at IJ_action on Instagram so you can RSVP for a ballot party near you.
Awesome.
I just want to step in here real quick because I want to share a really beautiful and powerful story from when I joined Taina's ballot party a couple of years back. I met someone there who had just come home from prison a few months before, and he was going through his ballot, voting for the very first time, and just had all these questions like, oh, what does a county assessor do? What does that person who's our city attorney do? And it's just like being able to demystify all those ballot positions and talk about how they relate to our everyday lives is so powerful. Because folks, when you give them the resources and empower them to get involved, that's what creates real safety and real change.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And it's not it's not just about providing the resource. It's about going that extra step and making sure they understand what the resource that you're providing is.
Right.
Right. Because I feel like
Absolutely.
that, to me, that's the most important thing that you guys are, again, it's like the most important thing that I see. And it's something that I'm navigating like in my own world and my own struggle is that like I don't always understand like when resources are given to me what to do with them.
Yeah.
And so like I could only put myself in those positions and be like, oh my gosh, like that person walked out with so much knowledge.
Yeah.
And moving forward, if he has a friend, if he has a homie that comes out, he's gonna empower that person to do the same. And so this is really like how we change like collectively.
And there's another story that I share because it's not just getting like the right people elected in office, it's around like maintaining a relationship with them like while they're in office so that to make sure that they continue to serve you. So there was another young man who was at the ballot party who it was his first time voting and stuff. He's formerly incarcerated but had been out for some time but just hadn't voted. And he, hit me up with a situation a couple months later, like, hey, the state just took $18,000 out of my bank account for my restitution. They just took it all in one whop, like no warning, no nothing.
Jeez.
And he had been making payments too. So, and he
You're probably expecting like to do something with that.
yeah, no,
right?
and he didn't understand what happened. So I told him, I said, call your state assembly member. You have the same assembly member that I do. Go ahead and give them a call. Your assembly members, not only do they legislate, they do casework on your behalf for state agencies. So I told him, hit him up. They hit him up. 3 days later, he called me back and said the money's back in my account.
Awesome.
I don't know.
Beautiful,
I don't know what happened.
See?
All I know is back.
All I know is
right?
it's back. And I said, that's the importance of like having the right people in office. It's not just about changing the laws. It's about making sure they have good staff who are going to advocate for you too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
knowing that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the last thing I forgot to say about the ballot parties, it's also going to be family friendly. So bring the kids. We'll have
cool.
activities for the kids
I love
too.
that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's always a better
beautiful.
time like that.
Yeah.
Right. Right? Absolutely. Now, again, it's great to have you guys here. Initiate Justice Action here, y'all. And, as we say goodbye, first, anything, because this was mentioned too. So, as far as like if folks want to get involved with your organization, or how can they tap in with you guys?
What are some action steps we can do to get involved?
Yeah, so we have a very vibrant membership program where folks can, come organize with us, become a member. We have a very small due system for the year, and through that process, you can come advocate with us in Sacramento to change policies. You can get involved at the local level, build your connections with your local state senator and state assembly member. But really, it's a great opportunity to really build a base of folks who are like-minded, who are impacted, who want to make a change in their communities to come fight for that up in Sacramento. So. It's on our website. You could become a member. We have a general meeting every single month. It's actually open to the entire public. Whether you're a member or not, you can come. And, in our general meetings, we'll usually have folks come and present. We'll have lawmakers come and present. And so it's a great way to get involved in the community and fight for that important change.
Yeah, so our next general meeting will be Tuesday, February 13th, 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. on Zoom. And you can RSVP at our website, ijaction.org. Or on social media. Instagram is probably the best way to reach us, at @IJ_action. So go ahead and register for that event. For our general meeting, we're actually going to be doing something similar to this, like an election deep dive, and really going into our voter guide in more detail, too.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, no, thank you so much for being here and, just sharing so much of your knowledge, as well as, what your organization, Initiate Justice Action, has been doing, and also celebrating some of those wins and sharing more about those ballot parties as well, because, I know where to catch Shervin. But lastly here, as we say goodbye to y'all, just what are some words of wisdom that you want to leave us with? We'll start with you, Shervin.
Keep fighting in your communities. I mean, it's lawmakers do not hear from impacted folks. And a lot of times, they're making these policy decisions without putting a human face to that decision.
Yeah.
Right.
And so when you're empowered to get involved, when you advocate, it really does make an impactful change. So come organize with us. It's one way to get involved. And just keep doing what you're doing in your communities.
Beautiful.
No, absolutely. I want to echo what Shervin said. We talk to a lot of legislators all the time who will tell us, like, well, I'm getting calls from my constituents saying X, Y, and Z, but they're really only hearing, like, one side of the story. So it's so important that they hear, from the voices of community members, specifically, like, Black, brown folks, who are from the community. It's so key. And something I always say is, like, it's better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. We know, like, how hard our lives are and, like, what all the struggles are. And there's only so much that we can do sometimes. But one, like, really meaningful way that you can have an impact is to vote. You might think I'm only one person. It really doesn't matter. But then when you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people thinking I'm one person who doesn't matter, then we stay silent and we're giving away our power. So I want to encourage everybody to, like, use your power. We have the vote. We had to fight for it. We got it now. So, let's make sure that we use it.
Woo!
Love that. Can you just say that one more time? So about the candle.
It's better to light a candle than to curse the darkness.
That was beautiful. That was I feel like people need to hear that. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Once again, we've had to Initiate Justice Action members here, founders, the Strategy and Development Manager, Shervin Aazami, and the founder and executive director, Taina Vargas. And we're going to go ahead and take a quick musical break. And at 12 o'clock, we're going to have the executive director and founder of Sawadi, as well as the creator of Black in the Valley, coming up at noon. Stay tuned, y'all, right here, Valley Views, KROJ.